Hi and good day. This is Sensei Mui. Officially, I'm Shaku Mui Shinshi Dai Hajari, which means I've been around for a hell of a long time. A little bit of background as a way of disclosure, and that would be that, first of all, we're here at St. Mark's Episcopal Church in Evanston, Illinois. It's a suburb of Chicago. It's immediately north of the Chicago city limits. I mean, they're conjoined. You can't tell the difference. And this is the room they allow us to use for meditation and classes. And normally I have people here. Today it's just you and me because I need to explain something, okay? I am the spiritual director, that is abbot, for Hongaku. Hongaku was originally known in the United States as Hongaku Jodo, and it was a Pure Land organization. But a lot of us were not fundamentally Pure Land Buddhists. Some of us were into Zen. Some of us had studied Pure Land. Others were from the Theravada traditions, and a lot were just seekers. Eventually, we became enrolled and fit into the Tendai lineage, which actually is inclusive of all other traditions. Tendai is one of the few branches of Buddhism that says it's all good. Theravada, Hinayana, Mahayana, Vajrayana, any yana, it doesn't matter. They're all good. It depends upon the individual. So Tendai, coming from Tiantai, through Master Ji Yi, and we just celebrated his day here a couple of days ago, honoring him. Anyway, he said there's no Northern Buddhism, there's no Mahayana, there's no Theravada, there's just Buddhayana, the journey to become a Buddha, or at least recognize that, excuse me, that you're a Buddha. I myself, I've been around in Buddhism. I'm about to celebrate my 45th birthday as a Buddhist. And I started out as a Theravadan in the Dhammayuti forest tradition. Ajahn Chah was my first teacher. And that was in Thailand in the early 70s. And I did that for 7 years, came back to the United States. There was not a whole lot of Buddhism going on in the Rocky Mountains. I'm from Colorado. And now there is. Now you can't go 10 feet without tripping over some guru, Rinpoche, Tulku, or something, Geshe. And here in Evanston, it's all about Zen. And I had studied Zen. I became a Zen master, a Roshi. Here we go. Venerable Old One. I'm not real keen on the term old. But I've studied and have been ordained to teach, or as clergy, a monk in Pure Land Tendai. I did a year as a Gelugpa monk many years ago. And my style is always going back to the Theravada rather than expanding into the Mahayana, because I'm not even really sure what Mahayana means. There's no Mahayana tradition per se. What there is a Mahayana movement, which doesn't sound good, but that's what it is. It's a movement. It's an attitude, and that attitude sometimes becomes anything goes. So it sounds a lot in my videos and my teachings that I'm not pro Mahayana. That's not true. I love Mahayana. I think Mahayana is terrific. What I don't like is the confusion that is caused by some Mahayana teachers. Mahayana teachers tend to be a little make it up as you go sort of a thing. So I keep going back to the Pali Canon to find out and to remember what it was all about originally when the Buddha walked the earth under the name of Tathāgatagarbha. And so that's my thing. And I practice a particular form of this early kind of Buddhism, and that's called Yoga Vachara. Yoga Vachara should not be confused with Yogacara, even though they do have similar roots. You see, there was a time when original Buddhism, Mahayana and Vajrayana, all practiced together. They were like all together as one group. And if you ever get a chance to see my course on the history of Buddhism, it's called The Pursuit of Happiness, and it was filmed by the Theosophical Society, bless their hearts. You'll find out that the history of Buddhism is not really homogeneous. It's very convoluted and can sometimes be very strange. And Theravada has a very weird history as well. But the idea is that what we today call Tantra or Vajrayana has very, very, very early roots in what we call Theravada today. Now, this is not just my take on it. Thousands of scholars will tell you the same thing. If there are thousands of scholars in Buddhism, they will tell you the same thing. All this started, Mahayana, Theravada, Vajrayana, were all interlocked until there were reform movements within Theravada which caused the separation. And one of the things that caused separation was that, quite frankly, Chinese Mahayana people were sort of bad-mouthing the Theravadins. Why would they do that? Because they were lazy. They didn't want to do the work. They thought, well, there's an easier thing to do. We see this in other religions. We see this in Christianity. We see this in Islam. We see this in Judaism. We see this in shamanism. There are easier, softer ways. And that's sort of how a lot of Mahayana teachings came about, looking for that easier, softer way. That's why we talk about horizontal escapes rather than vertical climbs a lot of the times. But one thing I want to point out to you, and this is purely from the Hongaku point of view, you are not a spiritual problem, first of all. And today I'm going to talk a little bit from that Theravadan tantric point of view, which is called Yoga Vachara, which is a view that Hongaku as an organization, Hongaku, Jodo, Compassionate, Lotus, Tendai lineage, which is our official name. It's really, really long. Sounds really cool. We just call it the Hongu Tendai lineage. That makes it a lot easier. We've been around for a while as a Tendai lineage, and our roots come from the Lotus lineage in Japan, one of the original 46 lineages of Tendai that can be found in Japan. So, the things I want to talk about are, first of all, that your self is not a spiritual problem. It's not an obstacle. It's not an obstacle to enlightenment. Maybe an obstacle to your temporary happiness, but it's not a problem. There is nothing fundamentally wrong with you. Please get that through your head. There is nothing fundamentally wrong with you. You're fine just the way you are. And this is Tantra's take on the teaching of the Buddha. He never said that you were a problem. He said that there are things that you do which hinder your spiritual progress. but you really can't help yourself. You're sort of addicted to these poor views and poor actions, very unskillful actions. Ego, in and of itself, is not an evil thing. It's not even a spiritual problem. You don't need an upgrade, so to speak. You don't even need to do these following things. You don't need to fix yourself. You don't need to improve yourself. You don't need to get rid of yourself. You don't need to see through the illusion of yourself. You don't need to transcend yourself or transform yourself, analyze yourself, or even understand yourself. But you really have to understand the way things are and the reality of the self. If you understand the reality of the self, then you understand yourself completely. There is this view that you're living right here and right now. Think of a chicken. You walk up to a chicken, you ask a chicken, what time is it? He lifts his little wing, looks at his watch, and he says, it's right now. You ask a chicken, where are you? He looks around for a street sign and he says, why, I'm right here. Surely you're smarter than a damn chicken. You know where you are. You are here. You are now. I have students in here. I ask them, where are you? Where do you reside? And the first thing they tell me is an address or a geographical location. They never suspect that they're here, that they're now. Never. It just doesn't come into their mind. Whatever you do, whatever self you are experiencing that self here and now. Waiting to get fixed before living out your life is not very helpful. It's not very skillful. You have to live your life now. This is where you are. This is when you are. And you're breathing. Therefore, you ought to start living. No matter what the circumstances, even if they're horrible circumstances, you still have the opportunity to live your life here and now, once you see how reality actually works. You cannot and do not need to find your true self, because you're already your true self. Whatever self you are right now, that's who you are. That's your true self. You don't need to get in touch with a higher self, much less a guardian angel. What guarantees do you have that a guardian angel is a higher being? That they're a nicer being? That they're really here to help you? You don't know that. You're making an assumption. We're making an assumption that there are entities that exist that we've never experienced, never personally, never directly experienced, but we're going to make an assumption that there are beings out there, one being in particular, who can do it all for us. And we have no evidence that these beings actually exist, not in our direct experience. You don't even have to awaken the Buddha within, whatever that means. You don't have to unify your little self with your big self. You don't have to go from an earthly being to a cosmic being. I once had a Zen teacher on my way to ordination as a Soto Zen monk. And she was fascinated. Knew squat about the history of Buddhism. She actually told me one day that in the Pali and Sanskrit languages, they actually spelled Chitta with a big C or a little c, depending on whether they were talking about your big self or your little self. Of course, she was quoting Dogen. And I pointed out to her that in Pali and Sanskrit, there is no upper and lower case. cheetah is always spelled the same, and please show me where it talks about a big self in the Pali Canon. Well, she couldn't do that, and that was the end of our relationship. These things that we talk about, this true self, this higher self, these guardian angels, a cosmic creator, God, deity, a big self and a little self, these are all fantasies. They're fantasies that we buy into. Why do we buy into it? Because we're lazy. We want answers handed to us on a platter. We want somebody else to fix us because we're too weak, we're too fragile. Oh my goodness. What is it that we can do for ourselves? Nothing. There's a whole branch of Buddhism today that exists because they got it into their heads that there is an other power that can do everything and ourselves can do nothing. And this is absolute nonsense. There's a better word for it. It has something to do with bovine excrement, but I'm not sure I should use that as a Buddhist monk. There are no wrong emotions. We have to remember that emotions are reality. When we get into these imaginary beings and we start, oh, I love the divine, that love that we feel, first of all, whatever love means to you, love is one of those words that really has no definition. We use it very casually. I love my bell. I love my pizza. I love life. What does that mean? Love. It's a strong, powerful emotion. What is an emotion? An emotion is a collection of thoughts based upon whether I enjoy or whether I am not enjoying. That's all. That's all an emotion is. There's nothing logical or reasonable about it. I find pleasure in something, therefore I feel an emotion about it. I emote thoughts and sensations. I feel displeasure. I do the same thing. I have thoughts and I emote sensations. They don't mean anything. Not on a cosmic scale, but within my life, they're very, very important. And because they arise and they exist, they have a right to arise and exist. Whether that emotion is anger, love, hate, joy, compassion, cold-heartedness. They have a right to exist because causes and conditions have created them. So don't knock yourself out by beating yourself up about emotions. They exist. Be glad. Desire, anger, and ignorance, the Buddhist kleshas, they're just fine. They're okay. There is absolutely nothing wrong with them. They can be unpleasant, but they can be fun too. Life's mixed. It's a bundle of stuff. It's like watching soup bubble. Vegetable soup bubbling. I was doing that last night, watching, and a piece of carrot would bubble up, then a piece of rice, then a piece of broccoli. It just keeps bubbling up. Here, and there, and one goes away as another one arises. Just because they're transitory, impermanent, that they come and go and they have an impact upon our emotion or upon our mental life, doesn't make them evil. Sometimes they can cloud our vision. That makes them unskillful sometimes. It makes us unskillful to latch onto them, to cling to them, or to be averse to them. But they just are what they are. It doesn't mean that there's no wrong actions. Experiencing the kleshas do not mean that you have to act on them. Just because I feel desire, just because I feel anger, just because I become ignorant, doesn't mean I have to act that out. I don't have to identify with it. It's okay to feel anger. It's not okay to be angry. Don't be what you feel. Yoga Vichara Tantra, Hongaku, has the feeling that you need a toolkit. You need a toolkit that will help you break the habitual habits that, well, that's what habitual means, isn't it? Habit. The habitual minds that arise and create particular actions, where anger causes us to break things and say things that we certainly shouldn't say. We really need some way of averting these things. To make the point that no emotion is wrong, in Tantra, when we create our cosmic Buddhas, we talk about Buddhas that are greedy, Buddhas that are lustful, Buddhas that are angry. There's a whole slew of wrathful bodhisattvas and Buddhas. They help us define who we are. They help us investigate what it is that's going on inside of our head, inside of us. Everyone has the same set of emotions, but we detail them out differently within our life. The details around our emotions are irrelevant. You can't find the answer to life, the universe, and everything through our emotion. You have to do that rationally. So long, and thanks for all the fish. Our personal patterns of thinking don't validate our existence. How we feel is no validation as to who we are, or our value to society, or even our value to ourselves. We weave these emotions into stories about how special and different we are. Oh, I'm in touch with the divine. I have a number 9. That means that I'm unified with whatever. That's a story you're telling yourself. It's not true. You see somebody on the street and you have an issue with them for one reason or another. They part their hair in the wrong direction, or their eyes are the wrong color, or maybe they're a little overweight, and we start thinking about how terrible these people are, and we start grading them. They're only a number 2, and we create a story about them. We're fantasizing. We're fantasizing about ourselves. We're fantasizing about them. But we have tools that break these links between the situation we find ourselves in and the habitual thinking and emoting that we have when those situations arise. The fact that such and such or so and so happened or was there doesn't mean that we have to feel such and such. Just because I get a bill in the mail that I think is a little high or exorbitant doesn't have to spawn anger and resentment and maybe fear because I don't think I can afford to pay that bill. It ain't got to be that way. That's what Tantra does. It gives you tools to deal with that. But then so does all the rest of Buddhism. Tantra's not unique in that. Tantra just looks at it a little more humorously. We can't make excuses, therefore, if we have these tools, that I wanted to do the right thing, but myself got in the way. We can't make that excuse because we are ourselves. So we have chosen to get in our own way and do these things. It's a practical way of looking at things. Just to say that there's nothing fundamentally wrong with you, however, does not mean that you are perfect. Very, very few people are perfect just the way they are. You know, the New Age movement might say you are, but it just ain't so. While you have no cosmic defects, and if you're like me, then you're going to have a lot of little practical faults. We all have our problems, right? For example, I am constantly irritated when people chatter at me. Sometimes I'm a little unkind about that. That's my fault. Sometimes I buy things on impulse. That's my fault. It doesn't mean I'm broken. It just means that I have some bad habits that occasionally arise. I get grumpy. I gripe a lot. Well, not a lot to other people, but I do gripe to my closest friends because they have to listen. The energy that drives my bad habits is the same energy that drives my path toward enlightenment. That which makes me stupid is the same as that provides me wisdom. It's the same energy. What gives me mental clarity and what gives me irritation is the same energy. Wherever there is stupidity, there is corresponding wisdom. Whenever there is irritation, there is corresponding calm. Wherever there is hatred, there is a corresponding love. And we have to seek out those more positive emotions when the negative ones arise. Just let's make this clear. Tantra is not therapy. If it were, we'd be charging a hell of a lot more for it, for the teachings. It's not about fixing yourself. It's not about improving yourself. It may help you, but that's not what it's there for. It allows you to view your counterproductive habits with some affection and some humor, even as you try to overcome them. It recognizes our addictive behavior. And an addiction is something we have to get over. And it can seem monumental, and it can seem like a problem. And we can condemn the addiction, but we cannot condemn the addicted. Those are two different issues. We try to live considerately, effectively, and enjoyably as possible, just as we are. In Mahayana, we have a brilliant way of dealing with that. We create sky gods. We took Shakyamuni Buddha out of the forests, out of the jungles, out of the deserts, out of the mountains, away from the Ganges River, and we put him up in the sky. We turned Siddhartha Gautama into Shakyamuni Buddha, and we created a god. And then, not being satisfied, we had to create more sky gods. And these sky gods live in the sky. They all live in these little pure lands out there somewhere. They are immortal. Matter of fact, they have immortal souls, immortal selves. They are entirely suffering-free. They're omniscient, omnipotent, omnipresent, and omnibenevolent. And for 1995, you can be one too. Yes, you can. And this is something that makes Mahayana very popular because it's ornate, we have all the gods, we're sort of pantheistic, and we can make you a god. You just pay your temple dues and make a donation periodically, and eventually you'll make it. Now, Theravada doesn't allow that. Theravada thinks wanting to become a sky god is a pretty unskillful idea, and I gotta agree with that. Because sky gods present a bunch of philosophical problems, and a few technical ones as well. How do you become a sky god? Well, Mahayana came up with an answer for that too. How do you become a sky god? Through Tathāgatagarbha. Whatever that means. But first, a little bit about enlightenment. If you run in to a very complicated, interactive system, say an interaction between an individual and drug addiction, a rational person will observe the changes in the system. They'll see how the person acts, whether they're agitated or sleepy. They'll see what it is that they're taking, what it is that they're doing, how they verbalize and all that. And then they have to come up with a cause. We always want to know a cause. And because there's got to be a cause to this incredibly complex interactive system, this event that's taking place. And the cause that we create, we create the cause, is simple, and it catches everything. We're going to say, this person is addicted to a drug, and this drug contains a reified dominative principle, an essence that causes anyone who takes it to respond in this way. And this response that the individual has to the drug is an expression of that dominative principle. Fine. What have we done when we do that? We say that there's a process called X. It has the result Y. And we want an explanation of how X becomes Y. So we invent this Z thingy, and it's invisible, odorless, tasteless, and colorless. But it's the essence of X, the process, which leads to the result Y. Z is just a fancy name for Y. We have just renamed the result as something else. And we said, there's the answer. Bob is habitually angry. Anger, something is causing Bob to be angry all the time, so we're going to have to lay blame on something. So it's his wife. We're going to say his wife is the cause of Bob's anger. What we have done is we've renamed anger as his wife. The explanation of the Z thingy that we created as an explanation for why happens is absolutely meaningless. It explains nothing. It is purely metaphysical, ethereal, nebulous. Well, Tathāgatagarbha is the principle that was invented in Mahayana to explain how people become enlightened, or if enlightenment is even possible in our age and time. So we created this thingy, Tathāgatagarbha, the matrix of enlightenment, the embryo of the one who has gone to and come from reality. So how does a practicing Buddhist become a sky god? How does X become Y? Well, according to Mahayana, it's Z, the Tathāgatagarbha, that makes enlightenment possible. It's a code word for Buddha. Tathāgata means Buddha, Garbha, who knows? It's a very obscure word. A common translation is embryo, but it could also mean nature, as in Buddha nature. Tathāgatagarbha is Buddha nature. It's the enlightenment principle, as if we needed a principle. Well, what sort of thing is this Garbha? In other words, is Atman self or not? How does it relate to me? If I'm impermanent, how can I have a permanent Garbha? How exactly does it relate to sky gods? Is Tathāgatagarbha the same as the Dharmakaya? What do these relationships imply about my relationship to sky gods? If Tathāgatagarbha makes me a sky god and I have Tathāgatagarbha, why ain't I one? That's the problem with the sky god idea. And if I still want to be a sky god, and if I've got this Garbha thingy, this Garbha thingy is obviously not doing its job. It must be asleep. It might be on opium. How do I kick it awake? How do I sober it up so it will do its job? Well, there are a lot of sutras which give a lot of unworkable answers to this problem. Most of them are incoherent and inconsistent, and together they are contradictory and confused. If we could look at a history of non-Theravada Buddhism, we would see a series of attempts to make sense of this problem of Tathāgatagarbha. In China and later in Japan, they were considered to be holy mysteries, sort of like the transubstantiation or the Trinity in the Catholic Church. Tathāgatagarbha and Buddha nature became a mystery. That's why you can't get 100 Mahayana teachers to agree on what Tathāgatagarbha and Buddha nature are, because it's a mystery. It's the other power. And this other power school of Buddhism became the most popular in Asia. In Rinzai Zen, trying to make sense of this Mahayana absurdity, the koan was developed. A koan practice is an absurd medical or metaphysical proposition which is self-contradictory. And it's supposed to shock the mind into awakening. This is how Rinzai Zen wakens up this Tathāgatagarbha. In modern Zen, there is still a premise that we can become a sky god when we discover the true self. And the way to the true self is to shed the little self. Drop off body and mind, whatever that means to you. And somehow the idea of becoming a god, strangely popular amongst Buddhists in the United States, in the United States and everywhere else where this distinctively Mahayana idea of Tathāgatagarbha is popular. It makes the basic assumption that there's something wrong with you. You're not good enough the way you are. That you need to be fixed, and the way to be fixed is to stop being who you are and become a sky god. We're self-critical. We're critical of others. We are not happy with ourselves, therefore we want to become happy. So we latch on to ideas like Supreme Being, Cosmic Buddhas, Tathāgatagarbha, Buddha nature, and the rest. How do we make the Garbha thing do its job? Well, we can go through the tantras. We can do all the sadhanas. We can meditate on these cosmic Buddhas and realize that we have connections to them, that we are the same. In Hongaku, the school of original enlightenment, the school that says, well, you're already enlightened, you just covered up with all this crap, like these hindrances, these habitual ways of thinking and so forth. The Garbha has absolutely nothing to do. It doesn't have a job. We've eliminated that problem in Hongaku. We say, you don't need Buddha nature to make you a Buddha. You already are. The problem is, you're not exposing it. You're not working to uncover it. How do I become a Buddha? Well, that problem disappears because you already are one. So you have nothing much to do. Hongaku is not a path to enlightenment, it's a path from enlightenment. Given that I am a Buddha, now what do I do? That's what Hongaku focuses on. Viewed from this point of view, Hongaku tends to look at the rest of Mahayana Buddhism as a bunch of fish contemplating how they're going to get wet. Or never mind that analogy, that won't work. But if you already are something, why are you worried about becoming it? If you've always wanted a job as a teacher, and you are a teacher, why do you worry about becoming a teacher again? Would you? If you're already enlightened, why worry about becoming enlightened? Already realizing that I am enlightened, now how do I use it? What do I do with it? You're wasting your energy trying to become a sky god. You're wasting your energy trying to attain something you already have. You're fine the way you are. Your habits are a little unskillful, but you're fine the way you are. You don't need to become anything. So don't worry about the mind of the sky gods. Okay. And never mind them. If you're already enlightened, you would know that sky gods are kind of a foolish thing to want to be. This is why in Hongaku we say, you're fine the way you are. You don't need to postulate metaphysical entities. You don't need to become somebody else. Just be yourself. Avoid the painful habits. Avoid the unskillful actions which lead to greater suffering. Develop methods to uncover this beautiful, unique being that you are. This is the Hongaku way. Thank you. Thank you for letting me share.